NBA predictions, they're one of the hardest things to get right because there's so many possibilities and so many possible outcomes. But there's also so many predictions, and if everyone predicts something, odds are at least one person's gonna be right. But in these 9 cases, these predictions were either so extreme or so specific that I'd say makes them the best predictions in an NBA history, at least that I could find. If I miss any big ones though, do comment them down below, because I want to hear them. But for now, here's what we got, and the first one is definitely one of the most impressive predictions I've ever seen. It's not completely accurate, some parts of it are off, but what they do get right is crazy. So they made a good sized Reddit post in March of 2013 about how the 2017 and 18 season would go, about 5 years into the future. So the post reads, Kyrie and LeBron have just brought a championship to Cleveland. Bynum has just won his 3rd ring in the World Bowling Championship. The Spurs are looking to continue their dominance as Greg Popovich hung it up after winning the 2016 NBA title. After signing his final 2-year extension in 2015, Tim Duncan is moving over 1 seat to the coach's chair, replacing Pop. Veteran wing Kawhi Leonard, the 2017 league MVP, has just signed a new 5-year contract at below market value to help lure dynamic PG Kyrie Irving to town in search of the franchise's 6th NBA title. Now some things are inconsistent, but let's break this down. He says Kyrie and LeBron have just brought a championship to Cleveland. Originally they won their title in 2015 and 16, not the 2016 and 17 season, so he was 1 year off. But think about it, at the time in 2013, there was no real reason to believe that James would be returning to the Cavs, because he was still in the middle of his 3rd season with the Heat, trying to win his 2nd straight championship against the Spurs. He would still play another entire season and a half before making his return. Not even to mention that at the time it was only Kyrie's 2nd year in the NBA, so to predict that LeBron would return, Kyrie would be the 2nd option, and that they'd even win a championship at all was insane enough. But let's move on. He mentions how the Spurs are looking to continue their dominance, Greg Popovich hung it up after winning the 2016 NBA title, and Tim Duncan is moving over 1 seat to the coach's chair to replace Pop. I mean, he was close here. The Spurs won the 2014 NBA championship and Tim Duncan retired. And at the time, there was a lot of talk that Popovich wanted to retire too when Duncan did, and that he strongly considered walking away. Then fast forward to 2019 and Tim becomes the Spurs assistant coach, looking like he was headed towards taking Popovich's spot one day, but apparently he didn't like the job and quit last year. So this guy doesn't have all the dates right, but he pretty specifically correctly predicted how things were gonna go. He would go on to say that Kawhi Leonard won 2017 league MVP, which never happened, and that he tried to lure Kyrie Irving to win another NBA title. But don't forget, when Leonard joined the Clippers in 2019, his first option that he tried to recruit was Kyrie Irving. It just never ended up happening, which makes things even more creepy. Now this next one's a little more well known and even more bold, because as we know, in 2011 the Dallas Mavericks came out of nowhere, did the impossible, and won the NBA championship. Well, once they made it to the Western Conference Finals, it became public that back in October of 2010, Mavs guard Jason Terry got a tattoo of the Larry O'Brien trophy on his arm, predicting they'd win it all that year. He said that at the time when he got it, everybody laughed at him and thought it was a joke. Well, it went from him getting laughed at to him having one of the greatest predictions in NBA history. His teammates weren't out of hand to laugh at him though. Before the season started, the Dallas Mavericks were forecasted to finish with the 4th seed in the Western Conference. They were expected to be good, but not make any serious noise in the playoffs, and once they did make the playoffs, bettors had them as the 9th most likely team to win the championship. They had 8 teams ahead of them they picked to win it all before the Mavericks. So it was a bold move by Terry and it paid off, and he definitely played a huge part in making that happen. But not so fast. He instantly ruined this awesome prediction by joining the Boston Celtics the next year and getting a tattoo of them with the Larry O'Brien trophy on his other arm. And not only did the Celtics lose in the first round, but he had the worst season of his career. Then he even took it one step further the next year and got a Brooklyn Nets tattoo when he joined that team. So come on now, Jason. You're now 1 for 3. Anthony Davis also had a moment where he predicted the future. It was in a pretty passive conversation back when he was in high school though. He was talking about how he got to go to LeBron James's camp, but was injured in the game LeBron actually played with all the students. So the guy doing the interview asked him if he thought he'd ever get another chance to play with LeBron one day, and he said yes. And fast forward a little over 10 years later, and he's playing with LeBron James as his teammate. So hey, he was right. He got a 2nd opportunity to play with him. But speaking of Anthony Davis, that also brings up this unthinkable prediction by Jalen Rose a couple years back. So back at the start of the 2018 NBA season, Anthony Davis was still on the New Orleans Pelicans, and by this point pretty much everyone knew that he wanted out, but no one necessarily knew where he was going to get traded to because there were still a lot of options. Well, nobody knew except for Jalen Rose apparently, because on a September 27th, 2018 episode of Get Up, when asked, Jalen said that Anthony Davis would eventually join the Los Angeles Lakers for 2 of Lonzo Ball, Kyle Kuzma, and Brandon Ingram, and that's exactly what happened over 9 months later in June 2019. Lonzo Lonzo and Brandon Ingram were traded to New Orleans with a few other picks and players for AD. But he would even take it one step further, because immediately after that he was asked about what Jimmy Butler was going to do and where he'd end up. And at this time he was still trying everything he could to get out of Minnesota, and it was just a matter of time before they traded him. So Rose then said that he would probably end up on a team that he didn't want to play for, but eventually he'd be a perfect fit with the Miami Heat. And I don't know if this dude went back in time to say that or what, because that's also exactly what happened. Because at the time Butler's preferred destinations were the Clippers, Knicks, and Nets. He instead got traded to the Philadelphia 76ers and played pretty good there, but Jalen was right. It wasn't where he wanted to be, because he left after only one season and of course then joined the Miami Heat exactly as he said he would do. Now for this next one, I really can't find the post anymore. I don't know what happened to it, but I remember last year reading a post on Reddit, and it was posted in 2019 before game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals between the 76ers and the Raptors, where I remember the person posting something along the lines of, what if the series goes to game 7, and in it Kawhi Leonard hits a game-winning buzzer beater and redeems Vince Carter and the Raptors from missing his shot 18 years ago. And if you're not familiar, 18 years earlier in 2001, Vince and the Raptors were facing AI and the 76ers in game 7 of the playoffs. The clock had 2 seconds left on it and VC dribbles down and pulls up but misses the shot to win this series. And with Kawhi Leonard, that's exactly what happened. He took almost the exact same shot 18 years later, inbounded the ball, then pulled up for the corner 3. But this time Kawhi made it exactly like this Reddit user kinda predicted. Another extremely accurate and creepy prediction came from an NBA player himself in Pete Maravich. And at his peak, Pete was an extremely talented NBA player that played in the 70s. During a 1974 interview, he said this sentence, "I don't want to spend 10 years in the NBA and die of a heart attack at age 40, which at the time was strangely pretty specific. And well, you guessed it, in 1980 he officially retired in the NBA after a 10-year career. 4 years later in 1984 he turned 40, then later that year he was playing a pickup game in a church gym when he collapsed and passed away from a heart attack due to a heart condition that he didn't know about. But okay, let's lighten things up with LaVar Ball. Now he's known for saying outrageous and dumb things, for being loud and making people talk. He talks a lot of trash saying he could beat Michael Jordan in a 1v1, saying Lonzo Ball was better than Steph Curry, a lot of things to lose his credibility. But the one thing that he's always said, the one thing that remained constant, that he successfully predicted, which he did from day one, was saying that his 3 sons would all make it to the NBA. And he said this way back when they were all in high school, so it kinda seemed like just another one of his crazy quotes back then. But looking back, he was onto something. Lonzo was drafted 2nd, LaMelo was taken 3rd, and LaVar was barely right about that one. But LiAngelo was actually on the Pistons roster for a full 11 days. So it still counts, and it made LaVar Ball right this entire time. On the other hand, one of the more wild, underrated predictions out there came from ESPN writer and analyst Ethan Strauss, when on October 29th, 2014, he claimed that the Warriors were gonna win the NBA title that season, which they eventually did. But at the time, I don't know anybody else who predicted that would happen. And why would they? There was no reason to believe they'd win at all. Draymond Green was just coming off his 2nd season in the NBA, Klay Thompson was in his 3rd, and Steph Curry had just become an all-star for the first time in his career. So with all that, the Warriors did win 55 games, but lost in the first round to the Clippers. They really didn't look like a threat of winning an NBA championship at the time. But the next season, everything changed. Klay Thompson now became an all-star for the first time, Draymond Green dramatically improved, and Steph Curry out of nowhere became the league MVP. In one season, he went from being a first-time all-star to a league MVP, and helped propel his team to a 67-15 record, putting the NBA on notice, only losing 5 total games in a dominant NBA playoff run. Everything went right for the Warriors that season, and Ethan Strauss is the only man I've ever seen that saw it coming. Then finally, I think the best way to end this out is with a Kobe Bryant NBA prediction. Now I will say, in Tracy McGrady's interview after his passing, he talked about how when he was younger, Kobe would always tell him that he wanted to pass away young so he'd have more of a legacy, and sadly it ended up happening. But get that out of here, we want to end things on a good note, on a happy note, so here's one a little more upbeat. I also can't find the interview or article where he talked about it, but I'm 100% sure that I've heard this a few times, where one of Kobe's teammates tells a story about how in either his rookie season or early in his career, Kobe was sitting next to him on the team bus and sat there telling him about how when his career was over, he was going to have won 5 or 6 NBA championships, be one of the best scorers ever, and a better player than Michael Jordan. And the teammate looked at Kobe like he was crazy. But fast forward 20 years later, and 2 out of the 3 of those things happened. Just think though how crazy that'd be for him to say. Imagine a young guy like LaMelo Ball coming into the league today and saying that. It doesn't really happen, and maybe if it does, that player's just talking tough, maybe making a joke. But there's no doubt in my mind that Kobe Bryant 100% believed everything he said that day. And day after day, year after year, he did everything possible that he could to make it a reality, and it worked. And if we're talking predictions, I'm predicting that if you're watching this video right now and you're not subscribed, you'll do it.